But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. We choose to go to the moon.
Hello, wonderful people. Welcome to the 93rd episode of World Blockchain Roundtable. Today, we're talking about the Umbrella Promise Whitepaper, something we've mentioned before in the past, and we're going to dive into it big time today, so that'll be interesting. So, host today, you've got Satoshi Shon with us, entrepreneur and everyone's friend. Joe, founder and architect of Dragon Chain.
Hello.
Lisa Davis, creator of the Mighty Layer over on Den Social. I am Denizen and creator of the Umbrella Promise Whitepaper. So we got the man in the house. And myself, I'm master of ceremonies for today. You might know me from Den Social. Also, Lisa and Sean, they have, if you're not following them on Rumble and YouTube and all that, you might know them from Lisa does a show with Sean, the Truth Tuesdays, which is usually posted, I think, in the Mighty Layer. You also might know Sean's crypto meme reviews or Lisa's New Normal. Just wanted to shout those out a little bit more than I usually do.
Thank you very much.
So go look for those if you're not familiar with them. Let's do a quick update on the World Blockchain Roundtable layer ownership tokens. We distribute these every week based on viewership. So the more you share these, the more views that a video gets within its first week determines how many lot or ownership tokens go out. So last week, each host will receive 106 lot from last week's episode. Each topic contributor from last week will receive 33 lot. Last week's theme was Role of Oracles, nominated by Durax, who will receive 33 lot for having a winning nomination.
Nice.
These tokens come with perpetual passive income, free edits, and governance votes. It is how we decide what topics we talk about each week. It is how we propose new topics. So definitely make sure that you're participating so that you can get those rewards. The theme of this week is the Umbrella Promise Whitepaper, nominated by I Am. This is something that I think the last 3 or 4 weeks we've had relevant topics, basically. I don't know about the Oracles episode, but a few weeks prior to that, I think that's when we started talking about this in the first place. And this is something that was initially published as a draft on Den, and it was a good enough idea to continue working on. And now I Am has a website up and it's published there. And I think that I don't know, it's something that I'm excited about because it's like such a good idea that I don't know why it's not being done, in my opinion. Maybe other people disagree. We can argue about it here in a minute. So, right. So there's the topic. We do, before we get into questions about the topic, we do a current events segment. So let's take about a half an hour-ish starting now. Let's talk about current events. Quick note, next week, we're not doing current events. We're doing a game show. So that'll be cool. We're doing a game show episode next week with another Denizen, T Swift or Die. But for now, current events, there's nothing going on in the world, right?
Yeah.
So current events, I've got a couple in mind, but if anybody has something they're itching to get started with, go ahead and shout it out, and we'll see where it goes. What's going on in your worlds? What's important to you? Positive, negative, political or not? Doesn't have to be about blockchain. Helpful if it does. Go for it.
What do you guys
Well,
think?
I think we're living in the craziest time ever.
Oh yeah.
Everything is so silly that it's like so backwards, so upside down. Lisa, did I send you that? I did send you that video. Did you go watch it on Twitter?
Is it in messages?
It's like gay and drag queens and gay dudes like naked in thongs dancing at it like Mommy and Me with all the kids and the babies.
No.
You talking
did
about
not
the
send me that.
advertisement for the grocery store thing that Zelensky was in, or
No, it was, you just look at it and you're like,
I don't know.
what? That's not real.
I haven't seen it.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, you did, but it's just
Yeah,
a
it's
link.
just things make no sense.
Yeah.
Once I don't know what it is about this show, but there's so many things. We have Family 9 Wednesday night. Next day, there's always something here that like it's from the movie. So we watched a movie that's on Netflix called We Have a Ghost. It's
I've seen that advertised.
it's like it's a decent movie. It's pretty good. Nice little like family-ish movie. But everything's so accelerated. So these people move in this house and there's a ghost in the attic. It's David Harbour. And like he films it. So it goes on, his dad puts it on YouTube trying to capitalize on it, make some money. And then, the internet goes crazy. And then they show like all these people doing TikToks and like this ghost gets scared and he runs into the wall. So they have an earnest challenge where everyone's just running into walls and bashing their faces, and they call it the earnest challenge. It's like, it goes from like, this is fake to like, everyone's like crazy about it. And then they're showing all these TikToks and people doing it. And then there's all, hey, it's, ghost rights. And then it's like ghost kink. And I'm so attracted to the ghost. And then, but it's like in a span of like a few minutes, you can see the real acceleration of like what it would happen in today's society. From like there's a ghost in the attic to ghost rights, and I identify as a ghost, and all. It was just so insane. But I'm like, you know what? That's reality, man.
Like how fast things move like that. You mean just the pace?
Is that a current event, Sean?
I think the current event.
Is there like
current event?
Yeah.
So like, I can't believe the hypocrisy of the United States government and other governments. I don't know if you know this, but there's a war in Ukraine, and we've been giving them tons of money and arms. Like everyone's admitted it's a proxy war. Everyone's admitted, politicians and generals have admitted it's a proxy war. They're fighting the West and NATO against Russia. And Germany has just agreed to give them a bunch of Leopard tanks, which is a big deal because we're saying we're going to give them tanks or we're going to give them all this stuff, but it literally could take us a year for them to get there. Dave knows this, knows how slow, like actual logistics on armor and stuff like that is. But Germany can have those tanks within less than a month in Ukraine. So I don't know if you've seen Putin talk about it, but also in Russia, they're much more still attuned to World War II and the fact that they beat Hitler. They were our allies, but they beat the Nazis. And the Nazis hated them very much. And they weren't, they didn't treat their prisoners as human if they were Russians. They did for, other allied forces, but not Russians. They were not considered humans. So, but they're still very in tune. They still have a, remembrance. Like for us, V-Day is not a big deal anymore. It's not as huge. For them, it is. So Putin's up there. Once again, Russia will stand against the Iron Cross of Germany. Once again, we fight against.
Oh, it's in response to the Leopard tanks thing.
The Leopard tanks. I mean, it was fire speech, man. But that's what we're doing. That's who they're fighting. That's it. Now, China has come out last week and said they're going to give arms to Russia.
And but Zelensky threatened China.
You're not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
How dare you?
And then said that American children are going to have to die.
Yeah, that's the
for
next stage.
Ukraine.
That Zelensky came out and said, demanded that America, you will send your sons to fight our war,
Mhm.
and yes, your sons will die because it's tragic.
So
I
this
didn't
is
believe it. I thought it was fake.
I will say I can't get past the fact that you can go back and even look at New York Times and Washington Post talking about how corrupt Ukraine was in the center of Europe, the most corrupt country in the Western world, at
Bingo.
least. And
Yeah.
we go
Well, we
straight
should
from
send them a
that.
bunch
You
of
know,
money.
there's human trafficking, there's freaking crazy amounts of money laundering, everything else. We go straight from that to fucking Ukrainian flags on people's lawns and buildings and public buildings. I'm like,
Mhm.
what the fuck is this shit?
Well,
That's mass psychosis number 2.
I think the
Yes.
speech that he gave, that Lisa is talking about, which we should play, that has snapped people back. He literally, you got to watch the speech. Have you seen it?
Well, so I posted that thing to the gaming lair that he was calling for this game to be banned because it was made by Russians. And I'm like, what the? I have to not buy a game because it's made by Russians because you don't like them. There's some crazy shit
No,
going
but he
on.
said
and
you
I don't
will
get it.
send your
Well, I
sons.
know. That's
They will
that
fight
guy.
for Ukraine.
And daughters.
They will
Mhm.
die.
Well, let me, if I could address, if he's saying those kinds of things, I think it's a little desperate because the Western media is probably not going to say this, but it's not looking very good for Ukraine. And Russia always fights a different type of war, just a slow, slug it out, grind it out,
Yep.
an attrition war. And the West has been, by U.S. led, has always been the shock and awe.
Shock and awe. Yeah.
And it's very different strategies. So I think that's part of maybe where that's coming from. I don't think we're keeping up with the ammunition. We're not producing it fast enough. Russia's outpacing the manufacturing. German tanks, if I'm not mistaken, they're more like a 3-man tank versus a 2-man tank. That's what we have as well. And the Ukrainian soldiers, their tank division, which has almost been obliterated, is from what I'm gathering, I don't know how true it is. They are more accustomed or used to a 2-man tank as far as for the firing side of it. And if that's the case, that's a lot of training that's got to take place in a short amount of time.
Well, and I say the probably most telling thing for me, because I mean, whatever Zelensky says is, there's a lot of propaganda and he's in the middle of that and, whatever. But the most telling thing was that the very same week you had this massive amount of toxic chemical released in Ohio. You had no federal officials going there
And
on
no
the ground
money.
and saying, hey, we're going to take care of this. We're going to bring you water. The very same fucking week, you had the president of the United States in Kiev standing talking about how we're not even only going to send you military. We're going to take care of your fucking pensions.
Mhm.
Literally, we're paying for Ukrainian pensions.
And
Like,
they
we better
are
make sure the Ukrainians are safe
Lisa
in
told me that they're
retirement.
taking money from our postal employees.
Yes,
Pensions.
our postal pensions are being so because they are refusing to raise the debt ceiling in Congress to
Which is
keep
good.
our government going to June, and then it will falter.
I'll tell you
But
what,
just to keep it going to June, they are
that's-
spending the U.S. Postal Service pension.
That's waking up anybody who sees it, because
If they see
that
it.
is literally absurd.
Yes.
It's like, oh, we're going to support them. Let alone, I mean, it's all fake money, but then
Well,
why are we taxed?
And not just our president, but Janet Yellen,
Yes.
Secretary of Treasury, is over in Kiev as well.
Anything
And
it
her
takes.
salary comes from the IMF, which I had no idea. She's the governor of the IMF. Why is our Treasury Secretary paid by the IMF?
same
Is
reason
that
the
true?
IMF pays anybody, to be honest with you.
They pay the
Oh.
Fed.
I wanted to say the thing about, Zelensky asking for quite a lot.
Yeah, don't use the word ask, because it wasn't an ask.
It's an
That's
ask.
what's so terrible about it.
It's an ask. Think about, if you can, think about what are their options, right?
I'll tell you, their first option before we go any further, was to accept the peace. There was a peace. Even the Israelis have said that they brokered a peace.
Yeah.
The Russians were in for it, and the U.S. didn't want it.
And
The US
Boris
wants
Yeltsin
a
talked him
fucking
out of
war.
it, right? Didn't he?
Yeah, we probably forced them. Sorry, I didn't want to keep on.
No, that's all right. So I was going to say with that, the U.S. has basically, not basically, it's literally said, we're going to give you anything you want, anything you need, you got it. Just let us know. You got it. We're with you 100%. Ride or die, Ukraine. That's the U.S. right now. And we've said that multiple times. We said it to Zelensky. Now he's in a position where he's got a country to run. He's got people that don't want him to turn over any territory to Russia. And he's got somebody like the USA saying, I'll give you anything you want. So he's gonna take everything he can get. Like that's his position.
He has NATO.
He's kind of obligated to, isn't he? If it's offered to him, isn't he obligated to accept it and take it?
He's obligated to pay the big guy. He's definitely paying kickbacks to U.S. politicians and to NATO leaders. I guarantee it. And he's also, he's stowing away some of that money into a Swiss bank account. He's taking that money. It's like it's billions of dollars, and of course he's going to take whatever he can get, but he doesn't really give a shit about whether he wins or not. So
what? Like, I don't know if this should turn into like a wartime scenario discussion or whatever, but like when you say that there was an option for peace, this was the turn over Eastern Ukraine and we'll stop suggestion, right? Donbass and all
there were
that.
A bunch of different
not all of it though.
But
I think it was after another vote, which could have been administered like by the UN, so that it would be above.
And what he made independent press illegal before all this happened, right? That's something the U.S. press doesn't care to talk about. It's like, it's for democracy. It's like,
or the
he
Nazis.
made that illegal. He legalized at least one. I don't know anymore. I know he legalized at least one faith over there for some reason, which is crazy. Well, and on top of that, and I haven't had time to post it, and I frankly might need to post it anonymously, but there was a really amazing discussion that was pushed in 4chan. So it's 4chan, but it was interesting because it spanned. Look, here's this guy's thoughts on it, but it went from the historical, including what happened prior to Crimea, what happened with the Donbass, the 3 regions that make up the Donbass, and had happened all that stuff. But to relate it back to the show, our show itself, it was really interesting because this person pinned it on, and I happen to agree with them, that the entire issue, other than the almost certain and obvious corruption at play with graft and kickbacks, though we're gonna filter and launder tens or hundreds of billions of dollars through this country. It's a freaking laundromat for us.
Beyond that, we did in other countries that we had proxy wars through. It's the what is it? The modus operandi, I guess.
Yep.
How we do shit.
But this guy pins it to protection of the U.S. dollar. That if Europe were allowed to use Russian energy, that it would disrupt their need for Saudi, which they have to buy with U.S. dollars, and that would directly threaten U.S. dollar, because all of a sudden that's it's a very powerful, big energy market for Europe. And it would be potentially, well, at least it would be a big threat, if not fatal. And instead, and Tucker talked about this. There was the post that on Den as well, where Tucker talked. They basically have forced China and Russia together now, which is a worse threat, right? And what we had tried to do since Kissinger took his trip over to China to get them on our side in the Cold War, we basically killed that whole thing.
I'm glad you took the discussion there, because I think that is number one. It's the most relevant to this show and to this conversation, I think. But that's something that I'm most when I get upset about shit and the way that it works in the world. That's kind of what I'm most upset about. Mm-hmm. We've gotten ourselves into this position, and Bitcoiners know it. They talk about it openly, like the dollar is screwed unless we prop it up with war. That kind of thing. And so we're in this position where that's kind of where we're at. Like, the dollar is screwed unless we continue killing people
But
and that angers me.
but this is something I don't understand, and I've been seeing. By the way, Birdtown Music Group, that's very hilarious. You should put the comments on screen.
Oh,
So if they ban Tetris,
About Tetris, yeah.
he's gonna lose the shit. So
they're going to. It's coming.
Saudi Arabia,
Or Kaspersky antivirus or any of that. Yeah.
Saudi Arabia, and those Middle Eastern countries, they are saying everything's going to China. China's our number one as far as energy goes. But then there's also saying oil's dead. They are saying oil's dead.
Are you saying the petrodollar is dead or oil is dead?
Oil is dead. They are moving towards green energy. They are developing like huge solar farms.
It's not going to cut
everything that they're doing is shifting.
Or nuclear or whatever.
Nuclear.
But yeah.
Nuclear could kill oil if they would do nuclear.
But they're shifting to mainly solar, wind, and solar, but and what's the call when they?
The
It's like wind, but it's
turbines, wind turbines.
No, it's the ocean, the waves.
Tidal stuff.
Yeah, tidal.
They're building these huge, smart cities and everything using new energy. So if they're talking about oil's dead in the next 10, 20 years or 50 years, and they're moving towards that, how do you not see the writing on the wall?
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at the BRICS nations coming together, forming the new currency, backed by gold. They've all been buying massive amounts of gold. The largest gold purchase in history was just made last week by who?
Central banks.
The central banks.
Mm-hmm.
They made almost 400 tons, right? 400 tons.
Wait a minute. I thought all the central banks were separate and independent. Wait a minute. Sean.
Except for that settlement thing that happens in
central banks made an order for
and that they all meet in Switzerland.
Gold. The largest gold purchase in history they just did.
Well, that's who Gensler refers to as the central monopolists.
And try to make a huge war, and like, oh no, we're just going to keep doing the same thing. We'll just do it bigger this time, and that'll save it.
Step back from.
There's some of that too. It's like just keep doing the same thing but bigger.
Where would we be? How would this be different if we didn't have a central bank?
No endless printing of money, therefore no endless wars.
No endless wars. That's probably the biggest human effect.
Government would be smaller.
Let's raise the debt ceiling because that'll create more gold. No,
we would have more sovereignty.
You can't when you don't have any more value. You don't have any more value.
Yeah,
which is why we're all here, kind of building with the stuff that we're here to talk about, because they're really, there hasn't been such a clear, obvious, different way to build things, a different way to organize until 10 years ago or so. And that's why a lot of people lose. Like that's why sometimes I feel like I'm going crazy, because it's like, how do people not see this? Like there's an obvious solution that people are opting to ignore.
I will say there's a lot
kind of
more
thing.
people. I mean, it's crazy to like me too that it hasn't changed already because of just massive wave, but a lot more people are awake to it. They're just not sure what to do, and a lot of it is suppressed. It's hard to talk about it in public or especially online, big tech, and I don't know. It's a weird thing that you think about it. Election season is coming up, right, in the U.S. So presidential election campaigns are about to start. Oh gosh, is it like we're gonna have lots of riots, lots of buildings gonna be burning, and who knows what identity crisis is going to come up in America. But the thing that I see is like, good gosh, this is freaking ridiculous. We have no hope of voting for someone who's going to run on a campaign of ending the central bank and actually saying, okay, let's fix this for real. Let's get rid of the central banks. Let's get rid of the IRS, the income tax. Let's get rid of 90% of the federal government bureaucracy, right? That's the candidate that I want.
The last time we had a candidate like that I can remember, it was pretty recent actually, that across the aisle, like everybody seemed to be like, actually, yeah, it makes some sense, was in 2012.
Ron
when
Paul.
Ron Paul was running.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember conservatives and liberals alike were both kind of like Ron Paul. Yeah, Ron Paul. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good guy.
And
Makes sense. A little bit crazy sometimes, but
Yeah. And
overall,
I do think
yeah,
the unifier as well.
But
Because
he
I,
wasn't
Yeah.
he audit the Fed, not in the Fed,
he was
which
audit
is
the
a
Fed.
half step.
You
not
got
the
to,
full step.
well,
Yeah.
if you can audit them, then you can have more justification to end them.
I think he didn't want to die also. But other than that, it was, it's the fact that it's an odd thing that no one's running on that. And anyway, anytime anybody's run to change the tax system, they're always, you can always tell Bush was the only Republican candidate that didn't want to change the tax system. All the rest of the Republican candidates wanted to either go to a national sales tax or a flat tax or something else. He didn't, and of course, he was the one that was going to get the nomination, right? So it's all fake. It's all fake until we see that. So anyway,
I'm a little
McAfee.
late. Yeah, great point.
Sorry,
I'm a
That's a
little
good
late
point,
to
yeah.
the party. Say John McAfee met that. Yeah, that's for sure.
A little bit
There was
more off the
two-
deep end, but still, yeah.
True. I think this came out maybe 2 weeks ago, but I just saw it today. There was a video of our Secretary of Transportation, Buttigieg, walking in the street, and reporters asking him, "When are you going to go to, Ohio? When are you going to go to Ohio?" And he's like, "Well, da, 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 da." He kind of brushes the reporter off, and this kind of
That
thing.
he was trying to reach a good balance.
Right. But at the end, what was scary was at the very end, he says, "Can I take a picture of you? May I have a picture?" Why does Buttigieg want to take a picture of the reporter at the, while they're walking? What's he going to do with this?
He's going to give it to his buddies back
And
at
say,
the
"Hey,
agency.
And that that was pretty scary. I
That's
just
just
saw
an
it
intimidation
this morning.
thing.
I went,
Well,
whoa.
it's like, because you think about it, that's the Secretary of Transportation of all things threatening, obviously, threatening a reporter. Instead of, it's like, oh, they want to balance. It's like those people in Ohio aren't.
You think
they're
that was a
flyover
threat?
country.
Asking for their picture?
What else would it be?
They're a
What was
reporter. Don't they
What was-
publish who they are whenever they report on stuff?
Yeah.
Well, I say that then. That's what I'm saying. That is obviously a threat because he already could look up and get their picture.
So I didn't see that video. So it was in like can I get your badge number kind of way?
It was kind of like you're walking down the street, and the reporter's like, "Hey, I got a mic here. When are you going to go to Ohio? When are you going to go to Ohio?" Da, da, da. Well, I'm taking some personal time, and when things are in balance, I'm going to go. And listen, I can't really talk to you right now. Get your number, whatever. We'll set up an interview. And okay, and then the report's like, okay, and then he says something to the effect, "Now, can I take your picture? Because I can't talk right now, but can I take your picture?" Or something like that. Did you see it, Lisa, by chance?
I don't remember the end of that.
It
I
was a
just
video
remember
short.
the part that I thought was strange was that he said, "I'm trying to strike a good balance." Like it was like a dating thing. Like, I don't want to text too early. I don't want to show up. I don't want to show up at the
Those are
emergency
flyover
too
people,
early.
Lisa. He doesn't give a shit about flyover people. It's like he's on the coast now, right? So he's in a cool region now, so he doesn't have to worry about those people.
Yeah, that was
That's
my
what
point.
it is.
It was
If
just
that were
such a bizarre
freaking
response.
San Diego, it would be a different story. If it were DC, it would be a different story. If it were New York, it'd be a different story.
I saw the
that's
video.
what- was
and
it
he
Sean?
was deflecting a lot. He was like not answering the question.
Right.
Oh well, blah blah. And then they just straight up asked him, "Are you going to go to Palestine?" And he said yes. And they said, "Well, then when?" And that's when he was like, "Oh well, we're trying to find blah blah." And he's like, "Well, they want to know when." And he's like, when it's appropriate, or when I
When it's actually safe in 20
and then,
years.
but Dave, if an Italian dude came up to you and said, "Hey, don't you owe Donald a couple grand?" And you're like, "Yeah, I do. How do you know about that?" "Don't you live at 175 Main Street?" Which
I love your impression, your accent.
Maybe you ought to pay him. That's not a threat. That's what Buttigieg did, dude.
Yeah. And in his defense, he doesn't the optics of him not going up there personally are bad, and he is a politician, and so optics are everything. At the same time, I don't know what all he's got going on. I know he's got a bunch of crumbling infrastructure to deal with. I
It's
don't
his
whether he is or
job.
not, but
It's
that's his job.
and we have a Chernobyl in the
But he
United
has a
States.
whole
and he
he
didn't
has a
go.
whole department to send to Ohio. He doesn't need to personally go to Ohio. Like
No, he does.
to be able to direct the show and make decisions
What
and
has been
handle that,
worse
he doesn't need to
No,
be
he
there
should be
boots on the
there.
ground.
I don't even think it should be
It
It
looks
booted.
better. It makes them feel like he gives a shit. Yes. Like the hearts and mind and the optics, those are all relevant things.
Well, it should be Biden. And
Yeah.
that money that went to Ukraine when Biden was standing over in Ukraine should have fucking gone to Ohio.
There's no money went to
Thank
Iowa.
you.
And you know who went there?
Obvious.
Trump. And he brought water to drink because they have no drinking water. And you know what happened? Everyone in the media made fun of him. They made
I did
fun
see
of him.
that.
As a
Go to
photo op.
Saturday
It
Night
was a
Live.
photo op.
It was a whole thing. It was how could you make fun of that?
Now, here's my point. I guess
Well, because it was a political stunt.
my
It would
thought
be the
is
reason.
here-
Whether it's
this-
a good reason, but you know.
But still, I mean, it's like, oh, they didn't want to drink the water because it said Trump. I mean, come on, dude. The View. Did you hear what Joy Behar said?
No, I don't watch
They
yeah,
the
they
video.
deserved it.
They deserve
Essentially.
what they got because it's
Really?
Trump country.
Original sin.
The
Yeah.
They're Nazis.
the audience.
Why
the
would
audience
you care
of the
what
View
happens to
gasped.
Nazis? Could be poisoned.
said.
And
shouldn't
she's
they?
referring to the executive order about the train
Yeah.
breaks and that kind of thing. But going back to Buttigieg, my thought is, okay, this guy is hungry for power. He ran for president. Now he's just a low-life secretary of transportation, but he wants to move up, I would think. So in my head, if I was him, I would say, okay, I got to take advantage of this opportunity. I'm
Yeah.
going to go down there early and show off my skills of managerial and organization.
He didn't want to be around all that poison.
And then campaign on it later and say, I was there within 24 hours of that disaster and I was boots
That
on
would
the
have been
ground,
smart.
and I did this, and this.
Go there and drink the water on camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're just talking about like, you know, how disagreeing with how a politician is running their political
I
campaign at
think
this
that
point.
opens
You
a whole
know,
other can of worms, Dave. I think it's the idea of putting people in those positions. Like he can't do the job. He is terrible. He is terrible at the job. Obviously it's a very important job, and he can't do it. He has no ability to handle it, and that's become something in politics. It's like, hey, we have this important position open in our bureaucracy. Oh, well, let's put a black person there. Oh, let's
Back
put
up,
an
Sean.
Asian person there.
Back
Let's
up,
put a
Sean.
woman
It was more or less, hey, listen, we need you to go ahead and step out of this campaign. And if you do so, we'll get you a cabinet position.
Exactly.
That's what happened.
But obviously, it's not good for the country. He's awful.
Right.
and I would say that applies to a lot of people running the country right now, and that's the source of a lot of
Bingo.
my
Bingo.
you know, I think that's just where we are. Like, yeah, it sucks, and we can rant about it and we can complain about it, but what are
beyond
we going to
that,
do
it's-
about it? You know,
the
is the
contrast
thing.
is obvious. They don't care. They are not there for the job that they are in. You know, if you took civics in the 70s, right? They're not there for the reason that they are supposed to be there. They're there to either promote whatever this global agenda is, and or to profit with kickbacks personally. You know,
And this is the kind of thing that that honestly that today's topic is about, because there's a way that things are supposed to work, and there's the way that things do work.
Right.
And the focus is on personal gain, not representation of the constituents. And the purpose is not to benefit the USA and make sure we're a stronger, more secure, equitable, fair nation for people to live in. It is to promote yourself or your friends or whatever benefits you, either financially or other benefits. So I don't know if we want to jump right into the questions yet, but I wanted to point out that what we're talking about is the problem that the white paper proposes one potential solution for. And do we want to go ahead and jump into this now?
sure.
Sure.
Because I think that it's so very related to everything we were just talking about, because it says, hey, to me, now I'll summarize. I didn't write it, so you can add to this. to me, it says a couple of things. It says, hey, number one, can we apply the concepts of decentralization and specifically of a DAO, of a decentralized autonomous organization? Can we apply that to politics and representation in a way that makes it more difficult to be slimy? And number two, it says, hey, if things are going to be slimy anyway, let's say we can't fix it, right? Let's say this is what we have and it's just going to be slimy or swampy or whatever term you want to use. Then can we at least force all of that money into the districts that maybe they're still not being represented fairly and maybe they're still being manipulated? But can we at least make sure that the money gets run through these local economies so that people can be better off even with the corruption? Like, in other words, if we're going to have all of this, can we at least funnel it through local economies so that people are better off? Because it's at least better that way. So those are the two things that I really like about it. Those are the two things I think are most interesting to me. We can either fix it or we can make it better even if it doesn't get fixed. And that's the promise of the umbrella promise to me, right?
That's a good summary. I would add it's a way to defund the lobbyist, defund lobbying, and defund the politicians trying to raise money for their next election. So it goes to the next level as well. But it's, even though maybe we'll be discussing this more on a national or federal level, say our U.S. Congress or a representative, this would apply as well to, the school board or the state, legislative, position. So or the city council. It goes at all levels or all branches. So that umbrella is essentially just that. It's shielding the money from the lobbyist from falling into the hands or into the pockets of the politician, our representative. Rather than say politician, I'll say representative. And that's essentially what we're trying to do here. We've, and kind of how it came about was I'm thinking, well, what is crypto? Crypto eliminates the third party, eliminates counterparty risk. Well, what's our risk right now? What's our counterparty between us and our representative? It's the party elites. It's all this money in politics, but certainly it's special interest in lobbyists. They are between us and our representative. And so what I want to do is I want to inject a legislative DAO for each legislative position between us and our elected official. And the person would have to run for office based on that promise. And the promise is, I'm not going to vote by politics. I'm not going to be swayed or take money from the lobbyists or special interest. I'm only going to vote per the DAO, the legislative DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. I'm only going to vote that way if I'm elected. And everyone within that district who are citizens who can vote in that legislative district will vote in the DAO, which would be an app on their phone or website, and it would say yes to this legislation or no to this legislation. And that's how it would go. And then the representative, we want them to be more like judges is what I'm proposing. We want them to be non-biased. We don't want to know their position, because if they try to influence back to the district and say, hey, everybody, I think we should vote this way or that way, what are we doing? We're at the same spot where we started.
But then doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose of them being there? Aren't they just kind of a monkey that pushes the button to make the vote?
Yeah.
Is it even necessary that they're there? Wouldn't the DAO function be able to
fine on its own? But then people would have to be really, really involved. That's the thing. I think you're hitting kind of the nail on the head or dancing around the actual issue. People don't want to care about those bills and tell them how to vote. They want to be able to trust the person. And that's how it used to be. That's why it mattered what my faith was. Mm-hmm. It mattered what my wife did. It mattered what my kids did. I mattered because you were voting for me. And I think I noticed this when I was a young adult, that didn't really matter anymore, because you could look at a vote on the floor and every Republican votes this way every Democrat votes this way with a 5% variance. That's not real. That's not how people are. That's definitely not how our country is. Just the 5 of us here, we're going to have vastly different tastes. One of you could be a psycho and not like chocolate. I mean, there's people are very different, and they should be represented that way. I always say this. I said, if you are in Congress and you vote for something that's terrible for the community, that hurts me in my state, that could kill, people and give them cancer, whatever. Mm-hmm. But it's good for your district. It's good for coal. It's good for whatever. I can respect that and understand that. That makes sense.
Agreed, Sean. That's exactly how our representative government is supposed to be, right? Yeah. They're supposed to represent us. But I'm telling you, and I think you feel that way, just like a lot of us. We're just mad as hell. We're not going to take anymore. We're tired of it. They don't represent us. They don't think about us. They are now the party elites. The party tells them, you're going to vote this way, or I'm going to defund your next election. Your competitor's going to win. And so they don't vote. They don't vote how their district. There's over and over and over, people talk about, oh, look at this politician. They're only voting for the polls. Mm-hmm. Well, that poll is a national poll. That national poll may be in disagreement with their own district, but they're going to vote on the national poll, not in their district poll. Example you gave of coal or non-coal, as an energy source. And so what I'm just saying is we can push the money out by using a DAO. And eventually, you're absolutely right, Lisa and Sean, hopefully in the future, we don't need the monkey in office to push the button, but we just want to make sure that monkey that's pushing the button at this point in time is pushing the button for we the people within that district per the vote of the DAO.
But people have gotten so terrible that we had the best example. You've got, and it's harsh to say, but it's real. Mm-hmm. You have a brain dead guy who had a stroke and cannot function and speak. And he's in the mental hospital right now, and he got voted in against the Republic just because he was Democrat. You have the biggest liar and slimy piece of crap, Santos, who was voted in just because he's a Republican, and they're like, no, he's our Republican. Let's keep him. Oh no, he's our Democrat. No. Explain
to me how the opposition leadership, Turtle and what's his name, Cocaine Mitch. That how in the world they're just towing the line on Ukraine for one. I mean, we all know they're owned. I don't know who pays them for that support, but it's kind of crazy. It's not even like they're not even playing like they're two separate parties right now.
Yeah.
No, it's like a uniparty, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Tommy in chat says something that I think is important to point out, and it's part of what I think makes this concept so beautiful, is that corruption and undue influence and manipulation exists in the world, and I think that it's here to stay. And if that river of money is going to be flowing to sway people's opinion or to change how they vote, then we can redirect that through the communities themselves, at the very least, right? Flowing up from the community and not down to it. I don't think we're going to get rid of people acting in selfish self-interest. I don't think that's going to be gotten rid of. I think the best we can do, at least in the short term, is say, okay, well, if you're going to do that, if you're going to run the show that way, then lobbyists, you're going to have to go to the individual communities, and you're going to have to pay for local ads, and you're going to have to pay for local manipulation instead of just concentrating all of your efforts in DC. You can no longer just move to DC and then use that as your central point of injecting, mainlining cash to people so they'll vote the way that you want. You got to mainline that cash to the people that you're screwing, basically. And if you can convince them through money or building parks for them, or making promises that you may or may not keep, that's you're doing it at least in the district, in the local communities that way. Right. And yeah, maybe we're still a bunch of slime balls, but we're at least more equitable slime balls in that case.
He nails it on the head. I mean, it really should flow from the bottom up and not from the top down, because then we do have more
We're
of a
supposed to
say.
be self-governing, so that that's like
Yes,
kind of
yes.
the definition of it. Yeah.
So let me walk you through a different scenario, because this is obviously a grassroots. All right, people are discussing with the politics, and a lot of us have checked out. Imagine this. Imagine that. Let's just say that I'm going to run for office, which I have absolutely zero inspiration at all, zero. But let's just say, and let's say that where I live is predominantly Democratic. Okay, and that party tends to win, and so I run as a Democrat. But I say this: I am only going to vote for the Dow. I know all of you are tired of politics as usual. I know you're tired of all the money in politics. I know you're tired of the lobbyists telling me how to vote and the party leaders how to vote. I'm not going to vote that way. I'm only going to vote per the Dow. And this is how I'm going to run for office. I am representing you. The lobbyists aren't even going to knock on my door, because they know what? They have to throw the money back to the district to try to sway you to vote, which means if more DAOs are created nationwide, what do we do with the lobbyists? We just cut them up into bits and pieces, and now they're scattered all over all the districts all over the country to try to sway public opinion to vote within DAOs for the representative. And that's kind of the concept here. So the person running for office, either with Republican or Democrat or independent or whatever, they're running on the premise of this: I'm tired of the way it is. We're going to change everything, and I'm only going to vote per the Dow. And if there's only 10 votes on border security and 6 are yes and 4 are no, I'm going to vote yes. But as soon as I vote against the Dow, then the Dow is going to do what? It's going to impeach me, and I'm out quickly. And the Dow it's like a homeowners association. It can have its own treasury, and that treasury could be used to fund the impeachment, because I, the politician, violated my sacred honor, my promise, the umbrella promise to vote for the Dow.
That's a word. That's great.
So maybe we can, while we're talking about how great of an idea this is, because it is,
Thank you.
Conceptually, it's awesome. Some might wonder how to pull it off. What are the security implications? How do you ensure that only people that are in a district are able to get into this DAO?
Well, how would you impeach a sitting congressman for voting against his constituents?
What are the reasons for impeachment? Isn't it the will of the people? We don't want you in office anymore. You've violated your sacred honor, your trust. You told us when you campaigned.
Right, but how would you do that? It would have to be like he would have to be impeached in Congress.
No, and it's the
they'd have to have like
it goes through the district. I mean, there's a process for it. It's an ugly, physical, real process, but it totally would be for one thing. There's an interesting angle, and I'm no lawyer, thank goodness, but the DAO could be programmed and agreed to by the recipient, by the congressperson or representative, whatever they are, senator, I guess, either, that the representative would legally agree to the terms with major penalties. So you're going to get this as donation for your campaign to come in. You're going to follow these rules. You agree, and it would be, I would tie it to something like, not just I agree legally to follow these rules, and if I decide I'm not going to, here are my options if I want to retire, if I want to say, okay, I don't agree with what the Dow is telling me to do, I have a way to get out, and it would be known in advance, and it would be tied to my honor. It wouldn't just be tied to, I'm going to get sued, right? So you would have those things that part of the funding would have to be held as a bounty to threaten me.
Bingo.
Right? So it has to be both, okay, if I continue doing this, I'm going to continue getting his money. If I stop doing it, all those millions are sitting there are going to attack me. They're going to impeach me. They're going to come after me legally. They're going to sue me. They're going to bankrupt me. That's what needs to be. And then you have real power, because then they can pay for whatever lawyers are necessary on the ground to actually start the process to go get the
Yeah,
signatures.
I was thinking the same
Blah,
thing.
blah,
There has to be some kind of penalty or punishment, because you could literally sit there for 12 years and then you're not going to run again. And then you get the sweet deal. Hey, do this, vote this way, do this.
Yep.
$5 million,
Mhm.
$10 million.
Mhm.
You screw everybody back home. You take your big payout and you retire.
Right.
So there has to be something where you can lose. You have to be
trigger.
punished.
Yep.
Agreed. And that's the whole point of the promise, because the promise is twofold. The representative makes a promise to vote for the Dow, and those that are voters in the Dow have a promise to what? Hold the representative accountable, as well as, this is the big part, the reelection. They don't have to rerun for office per se and raise all this money, because we know our representatives spend so much time trying to raise more and more money for their next run, right? Well, we're making a promise that as long as you are non-biased, you're not trying to influence our vote, because you're more like a judge, a monkey pushing a button. Hate to use that term, but you don't have to worry about raising more campaign funds, because there's the reciprocity. We promise to keep you in office so long as you maintain your promise, your vow.
Yep.
And that's the give and take. And I think that if somebody is running with that can articulate this better than I, and can articulate because we all know that the system is corrupt and fed up and too much money. This is a way to kind of push it out. It pushes out that election influence as well, and also the lobbyists and also the party elites. I think it's more direct representation. The only difference is it's a Dow. Now, one person might say, well, wait a minute, isn't this like democracy and mob rule? No, because it's within each legislative district. A district, say in California, that's predominantly Republican, predominantly Democrat, they're going to have their issues, and they're going to vote in the Dow to what ranks is what's most important, versus a Republican district in Florida. And
Marjorie Taylor Greene said something kind of like this last week, and she was put on a cross. She's talking about the national divorce, which is basically just kind of what we're saying, to let those smaller districts and even states kind of do, if they want to be more red, they'll be more red. They want to be more blue, be more blue, and to give them, basically, you could say it one of two ways. One, to give them the freedom to be more the way they want to,
right.
Or you could say to take away their power to make other smaller or other areas be more like them.
Now, I think that's paraphrase. It's like I don't want to like split hairs too much, but like that's probably a better version of what I heard her say, and what she was ridiculed for, from what I saw, was that she was suggesting people like physically separate. And if you want to move into a state that's a red state and you're coming from a blue state,
no, these are her actual words.
Maybe you can't vote for 4 years or something. Yeah. Like there were some things that she said that just didn't make sense. So yeah, okay, this suggestion that we can do whatever we want as states, sure, but I don't think she was saying that we. I don't know. It was. I think the way that she could have chosen better words, and she didn't mean it the way she said it
on Tucker the other night. And
but the way she articulated it,
she said, "I wanted to clear up what I said," and that's what she said. It was just about letting those states or districts be more of what they want to be.
People are already, Sean. People are already voting with their feet. They're already moving. They're voting with their wallets. We're becoming more and more divided. That's a fact. And I think maybe this is an option to allow us to be divided, but actually have a voice. And because I don't think, and this is a blockchain show, so we don't have to go into the reasons for the blockchain and the DAO, is because your vote is a transaction. It's recorded, it's historical, cannot be altered, cannot be deleted, censorship resistant, all those good things. And that's why we're using it. I'm suggesting in the white paper that we use a blockchain and a DAO, or a legislative DAO. So, but this is maybe a preemptive strike to prevent maybe a national divorce seems like maybe it's coming. Who knows? Let's hope it's not violent if it does happen. But if anything, it gives us a more of a voice. And guess what? If imagine right now, given all of this funding to Ukraine, if each district already had a legislative DAO and everyone is ranking what's most important, one district might rank education. Another district might rank the budget as a bigger problem. Another one maybe border security. Another one whatever. And if we start ranking this stuff, and then people start talking, you know what? I don't want postal pensions going to Iraq. Then that DAO, the DAOs also rank issues of the day. And the representatives, again, that promise is, that's what I'm going to work on. My district is telling me not to fund Ukraine, or my district is saying fund Ukraine. Well, guess what? This is what's beautiful, blows my mind. Think of the reporting. Joe, you could get this. Think of all the reporting from all of these DAOs that could be gathered. And these are citizens voting within a DAO, and we would really have a better pulse. It would be the best, shall I say, survey on the sentiment of America.
I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly what I was thinking is, look at it from the other side too. As a politician, you want access to real data. You would think, maybe not, but you want access to like actual, real, reliable data. And okay, some for-profit polling company might give you some numbers that, traditionally have been somewhere around the mark, or maybe those poll numbers are meant to influence how people actually do think. I don't know, but you could actually literally, without compromising people's identities, you could see, these are this is how people feel in this area. This is how people feel in that area.
I think that used to be the way, but now I think that you want to keep the money more happy, and the people are just stupid cattle that you care about 6 months before your election. I think that's how it's really become, because once you're in, screw them, make your money, make a lot, so that if you screw up too bad and they kick you out, you're fine. And then as it's, half a year before time to campaign, like, you don't have to worry about money, because you've taken care of all the money people. They're going to have your back when it's time to re-up, because they own you.
And
so
guess
you don't
what?
have to worry about it. Then for the
is...
next 6 months, you kiss people's butts and kiss their babies, and then you're back in screwing them over again.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's where we're at now as a country.
Yeah, and I think left and right, if there is only two, I think pretty much across the board, everybody can understand and agree that it's pretty obvious that most, all of the politicians we have are directly influenced either by big pharma, big tech, or other nation states that are paying the bills.
Military industrial complex.
We don't have a lot of say in any of this. And that's why, I mean, this approach is really good, because you're tying it to a DAO, you get better info. It's a modern approach. It's decentralized. It's much more likely to get you better representation and/or to have control over that representation. And there are a lot of really interesting angles too. There's a liquid democracy that I think one of the groups in Europe actually built some open source code for, where the concept was you essentially have an infrastructure, and this could probably fit in, I don't know, but where on tech issues, I want this person to represent me. On issues about healthcare, I want this person to represent me. And you could then switch those proxies, and it's still a representative system for the people who don't want to, get into the intricacies of, a particular bill, which is a little bit crazy for most Americans who are already working 3 jobs or whatever. And so that's a really good angle too. But the DAO thing is huge too, because it's, how do I say, the identity is advanced. It's not like, some voter in a poll. You think about the way polls are conducted. I remember in even the 90s and 2000s that I would consistently get pollsters calling me, and at the time I thought it was interesting. I want to know what they were asking about, because you could always kind of tell what issues were going to pop up in the future. They would ask you certain things, and invariably, when we got close to an election cycle, it was just blank. I did not get any calls from the pollsters, because they're actively trying to shift what the poll says.
Definitely.
So there's a bunch of crazy stuff like
If
that.
you ever got a poll from like the NRA, you know, they're
Yeah.
like, "Hey, are you for the Second Amendment, or do you hate freedom and are against it?"
Yeah.
I mean, it's I think they ask a bunch of questions.
Leading.
Both sides,
Leading
it's like,
questions.
it's so bad the way they ask the question. You know,
Yeah, that's super
Oh.
true too. Like the way that things are, even email campaigns directly from like politicians. They have a campaign manager that writes them and decides, oh, this is a good phrasing. But I have to unsubscribe from stuff all the time just because, like, the language used is kind of presuming my opinion in advance. It feels like, which I think is off-putting. But yeah, and I was gonna say,
I know I tell you guys this all the time, but you all are not normal humans.
apparently.
Period. Definitely not normal Americans. Right, like a big chunk of our country is very, not to use the word swayed. They are programmed and just follow along. So
That's always been that during the War for Independence, that was the case. What was it? It was 14% or so were actively supporting
and it was
the
like
change.
3% at the beginning.
Yeah,
That's what I had always heard. It only takes 3% to get
and
I heard
once
the revolution.
once a certain, I see somewhere between somewhere within those numbers, I've even heard that once. And this is the thing that's hopeful for me, because I think we've surpassed this.
That comment's gonna make me cry, dude.
It's
that-
good though. There will always be followers. We just need the leaders to lead. The followers will follow. I mean,
Well, and that's the thing that I have heard also, that once that certain very small portion of the populace understands that something is reality, that it does slowly become what is the accepted reality. The window moves, whatever else it is. Now, a question I have,
blockchain that I love is the reputation score. There's been several, and that's what I'd love to see, because we can do that now. If there's so many,
but it doesn't mean squat, Sean. I'm sorry, these guys are already bought and paid for. Yeah, I would like to know.
There's think tanks out there. I mean, you have countries that have like humanitarian scores and all that. Why don't we have a score by an independent, non-political think tank, and that you'd have to submit that when you run?
But
if
it were, we do. The Hoover Institute and all these other institutes provide a score of your congressperson based off of their beliefs and philosophies.
And if it were independent, I mean, the great thing would be, filters that whenever you saw a politician on for example, if I could go to a website and see the politician dressed like like an Indy driver with logos all over their suit, right? That's what we really need. And it's like,
that's
okay,
what we have. That's what we have. The only difference is all those labels are inside the code.
Yes.
They wear their little Ukrainian flag pocket.
They do. The current thing always on their face. Now, so the question I have for I am would be execution, because how do you get this in place? And the thing that I've thought of, and I want to see what you think of this, is because we were thinking of doing this to get the voting system in front of people, which is a very similar problem. It's it's a different problem, but it's very similar. It's a part of the big picture, is to create and we essentially, the people that knew most about it and the people that would be in the right industry to be doing this couldn't visualize it, or they didn't get it yet. It's maybe too early. Is to create a pack and create a DAO pack, or a pack DAO, whatever it is, but where the DAO is the pack, so that when the normal the normal person in the U.S., a citizen, contributes their $20 to this DAO, they actually have some weight. They have part of the governance, right? I think that needs to happen, because it'll empower these people. Number one, it'll give them something they've never had before.
Right.
Which is, a direct ability to say, wait a minute, and it'll also improve the ability for what would normally be independent press to become a part of that.
Yeah, excellent questions, Joe. First of all, I'm no campaign finance lawyer. I abhor most attorneys and lawyers. But anyway, yes, I would think that the Dow would have to be a PAC, a political action committee. It is I think how the structure would have to be, because again, to make it in layman terms, think of it as a homeowners association. There's a treasury, money's coming in, and you can vote, and you don't have to donate to it to vote within the legislative Dow. But the Dow, to execute the Dow is really, it certainly is a grassroots campaign. It would have to be, we're doing nothing else other than explain to everybody what we all agree in, that the system is corrupt. These politicians are there's just too much money in it right now, and we can divorce them or separate them from the money by putting in our candidate. And within our district, start talking about this idea, this concept, and somebody is going to say, hey, this is great. I'll be your monkey that pushes those buttons in Washington, or I'll be your monkey that pushes those buttons at the school board or wherever, at whichever level of government, right? And that is how it's going to have to start, I think. And of course, the Dow has to be, there's going to be some donations that are going to have to be created, or maybe a nonprofit or whatever, to create just that, the actual Dow, so that, when you register a child to go to school, you have to prove maybe a utility bill that you live within that school district, and you have to show your ID. Well, you're going to vote within that legislative Dow. You have to prove you live in that Dow, that you don't live in Georgia, but you're voting in Texas.
Yes.
So
that was my question: was how are you going to vet?
That we do.
You have to vet.
We have to have new legislation that limits outside interference in local elections. I've never given money to anything political outside of the state that I live in, except for twice. And technically, I think I should be able to, because my dad lives in the state. I gave money in Minnesota to the person running against Omar, just because I think she's terrible.
I think he's saying no voting. Like if
right. But we're talking about holding the purse strings and controlling the purse strings. So I think that should be a law that no more than 20% maybe can come from out of state. Because like Beto ran, and he got 5 times the amount of money that Cruz did. And it all came from California. It all came from everywhere else, not Texas.
The Dow, though, is only money for that district to get the monkey. I hate to keep using that term, to push the buttons in office. So it really, the outside influence is got to be directed to everybody that lives in the district, and not an individual anymore, because now the individual that's being elected and is put into office is not collecting any money from anybody. And the Dow is a treasury. And to also speak to your point about the voting systems, Joe, this is kind of another half step, because, if it becomes an app on your phone or a website that you go to, and you're on vacation and this legislation comes up, you can still vote on it. You're just verified. There's and Joe, you can speak to this. We know there's a way to verify, kind of like KYC for a bank, to know that you live in that district, that you still live in that district, and that you are a legal citizen that can vote. Now, having said that, the bylaws maybe in California might be different. They may allow anyone within that district who lives in that district, including a non-citizen, to vote. They might have that bylaw. But if in Texas or Florida, that's their district, their determination how they do it. But remember, they still can't vote for that actual politician because they're not a legal voter.
Yeah, and it could be an interesting thing too, that you might still get an influence of money that is without an ability to change how the monkey's voting. That is, if I'm living in a different state, maybe it's okay that I'm putting $1 million into some district that I'm not in. I can't vote in it. I just happen to think that district's very important, and they need to be able to pay a good candidate to run, or who knows? I don't know. I have no idea what the right answer would be there, but there's a lot of interesting stuff with the direction of the DAO, and I even wonder if there shouldn't be an overarching DAO that would decide which districts are the lowest hanging fruit. Where can we get this implemented first? Because otherwise it's like, we all live in different places. Like, I'd love to have it here.
Mhm.
You'd love to have it there. How do you decide? Maybe we need an overarching first one to get it started so
Yes.
people can see it.
I
Yeah,
hate
how
to
do you-
say
how
it,
do you
but
get
I
over the
think- I think
cold
the
start
best way would
problem?
be to make it a political party, to like or
Yes.
like a big pack, like the Tea Party, how it blew up, and
It
then
needs to be
all
a
of a
party, yeah.
sudden, politicians were like, "Oh, we have to get on board with it." Like MAGA, all of a sudden it blew up again. This huge movement, like, yeah, we got to kind of align ourselves with this and get on this train, because this is how we stay in power.
It could be something too where
So
it's
if people start running on the umbrella platform, if that becomes a political influencer to where they start to adopt it just to keep the power, I think that would be the way to actually get it going.
Yeah, and I think
Great point.
with that, I think I hadn't thought of it too much until today when you guys were talking about it. But it could be that a PAC is the perfect place to get as a stepping stone into something bigger, because then you're saying, hey, here's this PAC or a super PAC or whatever you want to organize. And again, I'm not a lawyer or anything, but I think that gives you more flexibility on who's involved overall. But also, like what you're saying is, hey, here's our movement. We have a PAC. There's funding if you want to run. Who wants to run, and where are you? Let's help you do this. If you'll run under our rules and our philosophy, you could call it the umbrella movement. You can call it the honor, the honor people. Whatever you want. But I think that is an interesting and maybe useful concept, because the cold start issue is real. It's
Sure
like,
is.
okay,
Well,
how do you actually get the engine turned over?
And there's an interesting thing too to ask. If they, I think there probably needs to be some function, and it could be a cultural thing. It wouldn't necessarily have to be a hard function, but how do you attract good statespeople? People who aren't just monkeys. That they do provide something of
Right.
value in terms of vision or leadership. You do
For
want
serving
that.
the people.
Yes, you do.
How do you get them? It has to be something, in my opinion, that they're not just a monkey. It might be something that
I
they have
agree.
to build leadership inside of the DAO, and and you can very quickly see, oh, that person has great ideas. Let's elect them in, right? Is it something like that?
Yes, absolutely. Let me make one more comment. As much as I detest politicians, I don't want to offend the monkeys in the world. So, but you're right. To find the individual, I think that's kind of, and Sean, just brilliant point. A pact of like the umbrella, whatever you want to call it, but that's got to be key. We have to find somebody. That's a hot topic. Everyone's frustrated with the money and frustrated with the system. Let's fix it. And here's an option. And if somebody can take that torch and run with it and say, I'm going to run on this platform, this functionality, I think maybe that's where it is.
I
Lisa,
think Joe knows better
What's
than
your
anyone
thoughts?
else the
I'm just
frustration
trying not to
of
talk over
trying to
everybody.
bring blockchain and this new technology and decentralization into politics, and trying to say, hey, look at this idea, man. It's awesome. Come on, try it. It's good. Come on, try it. And they're all like, nah. But if you had money, and they're like, hey, we have money. Wait, you do? Well, what is this? Yeah, well, it's this cool new technology. Everything's wonderful. It'd be great for the country, great for you, blah, blah. We got money. You know what? I kind of like this. I think it's the better way to do it.
It is.
But you're talking about statesmen, and I think this is kind of going back to like how our world is. We don't want statesmen. We want people to make us happy and to do to give us our
bread and
pacifier.
circus. You think?
But yeah, but see,
Free
like
tickets to Super Bowl.
I think
Well-
Ted Cruz is perfect. The movie last night, I swear to God, this is in the movie. There's this girl, and she's the next door neighbor to these people who have the ghost. And she meets the kid in school, and she goes, "Oh, you moved into the house. Everyone says it's haunted. You have a ghost." And I don't believe in ghosts. I'm an atheist, but kind of would like to die. Be cool to come back as a ghost, like haunt Ted Cruz and shit. So everyone, I mean, he's just so hated. But when it comes to being a statesman, he is literally like a constitutional lawyer. I mean, he is like, and the things he does, we can't do that. That's unconstitutional. But you can't do that because it's unconstitutional. You have to do this. So he does. He's a good statesman, and that's why he wins in his state, because he can say, he can campaign and be like, "Hey, this is how things should be." And then Beto goes against him with 5-10 times it's ridiculous amount of money more. He's like, "We'll take the ARs and we're going to do this. We'll give you free Netflix." No, that it doesn't work here. But the world hates the man.
Yeah. Lisa, what's your comments?
It's a popularity contest. Doesn't matter. Beto isn't winning. I mean, the media is lying to us. The media is not accurate. So I don't agree with that. But
everything's
I think when we talk about where this would be successful, I think we need to look at where there are places in the U.S. where things are aligning for something like this to be successful. And you look at Wyoming, the banking structure there, and some of their laws that are around DAOs are aligning, and so you would have some support and structure there.
That's what the Chinese are trying to get a glimpse of.
That could.
That's what they were trying to get a glimpse of.
But the SEC suing that the
All the
first
blockchain
DAO
tech in Wyoming. That's why they sent the balloon. That's it.
You know this, right? Like the SEC suing the first DAO in Wyoming. I haven't looked into the details of it, but they're suing it right now, saying that they didn't file certain things, a whole bunch of other stuff.
Right.
But here's the thing: the bread and circus, I think, works, and it'd be nice to be prepared for this, because the bread and circus works until people's kids are hungry, or they're being told they have to send them off to war. And guess what? If we don't fix this, and I don't think we're going to be able to fix it, we're going to see a world war, because that's what they want. That's where they are headed with the current representatives, and that's what we're going to get. And whether we fix it before it happens or after it happens, I don't know. But
we talked about this on our show on Tuesday, and I've been saying for a year that we're going to have a nuclear something. I said it was going to be something small, something tactical, but we're going to break that barrier. And Lisa straight up made fun of me.
Hope not.
I didn't make fun of you. I just disagree. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't.
You called me a big stupid doo-doo head. I'm
No,
pretty sure that's a quote. And then you came here and poked me in the eye. But everyone's like, "No way, you're crazy." Awakening said the aliens won't let it happen. But I've been saying it for a long time, and we keep talking about World War III. We keep talking about huge, and I think that's part of it, because when the smaller thing happens, it's terrible, but it's not World War III.
Well, here you go. Here's the DAO. The DAO would fix that. If we all had DAOs, we the people don't want wars. We don't want endless wars. It's the politicians. It's the leaders who are pushing those buttons and manipulating the media to push us into wars. And we, the people, really don't want wars. We don't have anything against the actual Russian people, or the Russian people don't have anything against the real the Ukrainian people. It's the leaders.
Zelensky's already selling the reconstruction of Ukraine. He said, "We have all the contracts with BlackRock, with everybody. Yeah. If you want military, if you want tech, if you want whatever, come make deals with Ukraine." He's so excited about World War III, and
Oh, I
because
know.
all the rebuilding and all the reconstruction will be, all the dollars come through Ukraine, and he knows it.
But if the vote was in of all the Dows for peace, I bet that's what the vote would be. And
Right.
guess what the representatives would have to do? They'd have to push
Stand
back and say,
down.
no, my people, all of the majority of the people want a peace negotiation. And there's no talk about that.
I
And
think
this
the
is-
building of
that
any
would
country
percolate
after a
up.
war should be humanitarian and zero profit. That'll kill it. That'll kill it.
Well, and that's the thing. Everybody knows this to be the truth too. That World War II, our involvement, U.S.'s involvement in World War II, was a false flag. It was known. It was orchestrated to get us into the war. Right. This happens time and time again.
FDR knew that the planes, they were going to bomb Pearl Harbor ahead of time.
How many other
Probable
wars have been the same thing? Everybody knows this.
I wouldn't say that everybody knows this.
Well,
Everybody doesn't know that we got into the Vietnam War under false pretenses.
Yeah.
Everyone doesn't even know, surprisingly to me, everyone doesn't know that we invaded Iraq under false pretenses, under literal lies
Weapons of mass
meant
destruction.
to sway
I
the
kind of
opinion
thought
of American
everybody knew
people.
about Iraq.
Well, when I say everybody, I mean everybody. Everybody doesn't know that because everybody doesn't think about that. If you look into it, there is documentation, there is admission, there is revelation, but people
and it's a window
largely
too,
aren't thinking about that.
It's safe enough for them to let us know they don't fight as much that what happened to Japan. You can find specials on PBS in the 90s about it, right? That 9/11, we're going to have to wait another 15, 20 years before the press starts saying, oh, yeah, that really was a false flag by X, Y, and Z, right? We're still waiting for the Kennedy stuff. Stuff came out recently, later than promised, still other stuff hidden. We have to wait 75 years for the virus info.
I think that's the thing, man, because you're eroding trust while making people stupid to kind of find a balance to where eventually you could do what you want and people are just dumb enough to let you do it.
Right.
It's like a scale. One's going up, one's going down.
Yeah.
So I think that's why they keep putting it off. But how many more examples do you need until the government says, oh, we got to do this for this? And you're like, we need more proof.
Well, they're just doing it anyway. And that's, again, I go back to the Dow. They're doing it anyway against what we think or believe or don't want to happen.
I think that's where punishment comes in, though, that you need to have a punishment, which I think should be radical. I think whenever we tear it all down and rebuild it, I've told Lisa, we need the death penalty for corruption.
It's actually in place. We just don't apply it.
I mean, when you say the R word, when you say great, when you say great, when you say, molestation, those things make you cringe a little bit when you talk about those crimes. Corruption should make you feel dirty when you say it. I think it needs to be like just a disgusting crime, because it is it's raping of trust. You're giving people all this trust and all this authority. And I hate to use the word power. I hate to use the word officials. I stopped doing that a long time ago, using the word public officials or elected officials. They're servants, elected public servants.
Can I tell you something that important, something as simple as term limits. It's obviously something that should be there because these people are, what Claude Pepper, I remember in Florida, was in Congress. Congress is supposed to be the quick, I'm a farmer, I come in, I serve 2 years and I leave. He was in there until he died. He had to die to get him out of office, right? And it's because of the way things work, right? Term limits would be radically important because you could get new blood in. People who might, let's say I Am had some inkling that it's like, I should run, I should go to Congress. Would he? It's doubtful unless he has very rich buddies. It's not going to happen, right? Term limits would fix that. But then every time, even the people who would normally support term limits always throw in is like, yes, but then you're going to have the deep state controlling everything because they don't have term limits. And I say they should get rid of the government services, the GS schedule stuff, where essentially they were, and I can't remember if it was after Andrew Jackson, that they used to appoint all their own buddies, and their the people who donated to their campaigns would be, which happens anyway, by the way.
Ulysses S. Grant, unfortunately,
U.S.
was
Grant.
named for that way.
Yes,
I
so
mean,
But every president has
Yes,
done that.
they need to get rid of that.
We just mentioned Buttigieg.
But
Step out of the
that
election, and we'll give
military
you a
work.
cabinet position.
Yeah.
What questions do we
That's how
have?
the military works though, under the geostructure.
Yeah, we need to get questions.
Yeah. Not to interrupt that, because it was really good talking point, but there are a couple of other questions. I think we actually have, we just deep dived into the whole concept around today's topic, and I think we probably covered most, if not all, of the other points that were brought up in the questions. But let's go through them anyway, and it'll allow us to refocus on anything we may have wanted to add more to, even if we talked about it prior. Anyway, so we've got I am for I am is the first two, so we'll read the second one here, and there's a few points that are basically FAQ questions that you've been asked about this.
Right. These are the most common questions I've been asked.
Right. So some of the questions, one, isn't this how our representative government is supposed to work? Number two, don't you think the big money donors will try to squash this like a bug?
Yeah.
Can I allow someone else to be my proxy and vote on issues I know little about? And finally, what will the cost be to set up a legislative DAO? So these are all thoughtful questions, actually, because it's, some of them are like, wouldn't they just squash this? And some of them are like, okay, how do you actually turn the key?
Couldn't you do a proxy vote if you had an NFT and you transferred it to someone else's wallet?
That's scary.
That wouldn't be right.
Isn't a proxy vote really just you asking your buddy what they think? Even if I'm casting the vote and I don't know, you're just being like, hey, I know you don't live here, but what do you think about this thing? Because I don't know.
Could be like a trader bot. Like
it's not that scary if we're talking about on a smaller scale. If you're talking about,
still, it should be something built into the system. If you want to do proxy votes, it should be built in so that it is transparent.
Each DAO should have a bylaw to allow it or not allow it. I have thought long and hard about this, and I oppose them. I oppose a proxy vote, and here's why. Didn't we just give our representative our proxy vote, and what kind of mess are we in?
You're going to have the same problem because
we're going to have the exact same thing.
Paying. Yeah,
exact same thing. And so I
agree.
And I would rather have fewer votes that are real votes and not proxy votes. Yeah. And I get it. If I don't know anything about education and some legislation is being proposed on education, I'm not going to vote on every piece of legislation that's popping up, and I'm not well informed enough. But if I'm an accountant and I like finance and I'm a numbers guy, guess what? That's going to be more appealing, more interesting. And so who is actually voting in the legislative DAOs? More informed voters. So the representative, when looking at the total DAO votes and the tally of the DAO vote, they're getting a much more informed vote rather than a proxy that could have been manipulated.
You know what else? You could probably work in, and I don't know this, right? But I'd have to think about it. But the structure could be, what if the representative that is currently in the official office that the DAO is wrapping, what if the representative had something like 25%, and I don't know if that's the right number, of the vote, where essentially, if not enough people care, the representative can kind of vote as they would. So you want to have the right person there, but they could be easily overruled. They still have to honor it. And I don't know if 25% is the right number.
In version 2.0 on the white paper on the website, I think I mentioned that one scenario or suggestion that the bylaws could maybe propose and pass is that the representative actually has 2 votes. And the reason for that, if let's say that there were 100 votes yes and 100 votes no, then the representative could be the tiebreaker. However, again, I would much more prefer our representative to be neutral on everything, silent on their viewpoint, and be much more like a judge than because of any way that they can be influenced and giving them, say, 25% of the vote allows 25% of the total Dow vote to be bought.
That is true. I would still want to know what they believe. Even in fact, to me, it'd be useful to know. Look, I'm for X, but the Dow's against it.
Agreed.
This is I have to vote as the Dow. I've agreed to it. It's my honor, right?
And then my thinking on that is because I played that game theory out, and I thought, yeah, I would like to know how they vote, but guess what's going to happen? We're putting money back into the election because now our Dow is going to become fragmented, and people aren't going to want this person to come back or they're going to run against them purely on politics and philosophy versus.
But the great thing, in my opinion, is they would probably launch their own Dow, and it could even be.
So it's Dow versus Dow.
Yeah.
What about if on a proxy vote? Couldn't you have a reward system, and then people that would do the proxy vote, they would dive deeper into the issues. They would cast your vote. You would put like, I'm more conservative on this. I'm more liberal on this. I'm more super liberal on this. Super ultra conservative on this, and then they would vote. They would get a reputation score, but then you could just go and peruse it. Like they would have a reputation score and then a synopsis of what they voted on. You could check that once a month. What you don't have to, people don't want to stay up and check on all the issues. Well, you could see if they're going with what you want or if they're not. And if they're not going with what you want, you take your vote away from them and you can give it to someone else who will then be rewarded because they have more people in their proxy vote. You have to kind of get like little mini Dows in the Dow.
Well, yeah, but even without proxy, though, you could still handle it because most bills, which is, I have another question after this, but most bills go through the process through committee and stuff like that. And so there might be micro issues, not just voting, but it might be, we want you to express support for this or to sponsor it. Those types of other functions that rep would do.
Yes, those will happen.
Those have to be there. But it could be that, like Sean said, I might not know how the Dow is going, but I might vote one way and then decide after I know a little more, it's like, I'm going to change my vote to this, right? Or whatever else. But you'd also have to consider proposals which would potentially be really valuable because it's the source of actual law would be, we want you to introduce this bill. Right. And whether it's written by the Dow, I don't know how you handle that, because in real life, the rep doesn't actually write those bills. It's either the pharmaceutical company or somebody who is, wants that bill through, writes it and gives it to them. So you could essentially model the same things. Like, okay, Jim over here is very interested in crypto, and he's going to write something to, like, we want this bill in, and now our rep. And the crazy beauty, especially with the funding, and that's why you might want external funding, is you might get a community of people in a certain district that has the vision to do something that everybody actually wants, but we only have 1 or 2 DAOs in the entire country. That all the money that might have gone to my local representative, I'm going to give to that freaking DAO because they're getting shit done. And I want him, whoever is, or this DAO, to have that much influence where people know, holy shit, they've got $80 million to spend, and it's one district.
That would be basically you telling your representative, like, hey, if you want my money, you're gonna have to do what they're doing.
Right. Yeah. And that's where your statements, your statesman comes into play, right?
Yeah.
Because that person is rising up as that DAO becomes more powerful on the national scene, shall we say. So that individual is rising up as well and becomes, chairperson of these various different committees.
Which is actually a very disgusting thing to say and would make our founding fathers weep. But yeah, that's the truth. Yeah. We got the money. People start listening to you, Yeah.
And Sean, the role of the representative is our proxy. They're the ones who are supposed to do the research on the bills and vote on our behalf based off of their expertise. And How
But
can they be expert in education and
Yeah.
border security and military and budgets? They just can't. But in
is.
legislative,
and
I mean,
mining, yeah.
but the Dow people
Hmm.
will be experts within that
And it's
legislative body.
wisdom of the crowd. You end up really
Yes.
with, you're going to have the best ideas
Bingo.
from my entire district.
They're going to
that
have
are
the wisdom of
dictating
their
this vote.
constituents.
Yep.
Which is how it's supposed to be.
And you are going to have some districts that are less experienced in certain, like
Mm-hmm.
an Iowa district is going to have a lot better information about agriculture than will an urban district, right?
The experience is there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think with the proxy votes, though, that is a way to maximize participation in politics and getting the information that you're getting is right from the source.
It's
So
just
you're
dangerous.
not getting angry from what CNN tells you. You're not getting happy by what Fox tells you. It's like, here is a synopsis of the bill.
I just think if you're not willing to do the research and educate yourself, you don't deserve
I
to
agree.
be able to vote.
I think I'm convinced that
Like-
you don't want the proxy, because you end up, if you don't have a proxy, you will have a more competitive effort. I don't have to worry.
Dangerous.
Let's say I really know about this issue, but there's a proxy who happens to be a celebrity that everybody's just, well, this freaking celebrity, he's in movies, so I'm gonna put my proxy to him. I can't compete, right? Whereas if people just don't know about that issue, they don't vote, I have a better weight, and so you end up with the ability to better.
I want to.
It made me think of the idea when I was game theorying out the idea of proxy. I was thinking, the lobbyist that lives in my district, that's one vote, but his or her money that he or she
Right.
controls is a lot of money, which controls a lot of voting, shall we say, in Congress, right?
Yep.
But in the district, in my legislative Dow, they are only one vote.
That's amazing too. You know why? Because the money that goes in to that Dow is not going to be focused on, okay, yeah, I have 1 million of your votes to the other 5 million that you've raised, right? That's 20%. Whereas if I give you $1 million, I'm giving it to you for the right reason, because you are essentially going to do what's best for the district, which, because the governance comes from the single voters. That's pretty amazing.
Hey, I want to offer an anecdote solution here that I got from one of my old bosses, and then I want to read the next question since it's the last one and we're at time anyway. All of that you guys were just talking about reminds me of something. My when I was in the military, one of the guys I worked for, Andy, he had this concept, the ice cream solution, the ice cream cone solution, and that's what I call it. I don't know what he called it, but he said basically everybody should either get a vote or an ice cream cone. And if you would prefer to get the ice cream cone, I would prefer you not to vote. And I thought it was an interesting, funny, cute, but also interesting, like, hey, if you don't actually have quality input here, if you don't actually have an opinion based on anything, just go get an ice cream cone, because maybe we don't want you weighing in after all.
A YouTuber did that, right?
A YouTuber did that?
He made a video where he said, "I'll give you this ounce of silver." It was a 10-ounce bar of silver.
Yeah, or
an ice cream cone.
Mark Dice.
Literally everyone took the ice cream cone.
Okay.
And furthermore, he did it in front of a silver and coin shop where you could have walked in.
Could have just walked in right away.
Yeah.
I remember that.
So the last question here from cryptocurrency. Let's I think we've talked about this. We probably don't have to hit it that much, but I want to read it because I don't want to just skip over it. This is from cryptocurrency. What are the key findings and recommendations presented in the Umbrella Promise white paper? How can they be applied to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace? So in the workplace is probably a specific area that we did not go thoroughly into today. We don't have a ton of time left, but I do want to offer this up as a focus point as we go out today.
Now that you folks understand the concept, how would you answer this question? And then I'll throw my ideas.
I'll go last. I got something, but I'll go last.
Okay.
Well, obviously, workplace legislation, you would have a bigger say in that voting.
I would say anything sent to a federal or other centralized authority to dictate diversity, equity, and inclusion is going to not give you any of that. And it'll, in fact, get people killed in the end. That is proven known. The hires should be made on skills.
Thank you.
And anyone who says that, oh, that's not going to give you diversity is fucking racist.
Thank you.
Okay.
I
I've always hired on
That's a good
skills,
point.
and I've always had, compared to my compared to competitive companies,
Mhm.
I've always had the most diverse workforce, even though I am literally hiring only on skill. And anybody who thinks you have to have some requirement to hire, I was like, you have to have so many of this and so many of that, is racist and or sexist and or all the rest of it, right?
It's interesting that you make that point. I don't. If I were guessing, I would say that none of you probably read The Atlantic. But there is a writer for The Atlantic who has a book. I haven't finished it, but he has a book basically on that point you just made, Joe, about I think it's called woke racism, basically.
Yes.
But it's this concept of like, no, what you're saying is actually that you don't think minorities have the capability to be as good of an adult as everybody else. That, I'm butchering the statement, but it's that sort of thing. You're like, if you're saying that people can't do it because they're not good enough and they need the scales tilted in their way. Now, that's not to say that there isn't currently an unfair playing field. I'm not saying that at all, because there absolutely is an unfair playing field. And I do believe that there is systemic racism that is driving some of that, not all of it.
See, that's the difference. I agree with you on that. I think that when you look at the issue, one side says, hey, we need to help these helpless. And I'm of the mindset that, no, you need to punish the racists that are causing the problems. It's because if you force
don't keep the problems in place and just try to. That's like, I was reading a documentary book about computer scientists, basically, but there's this famous guy, Captain Crunch, old school hacker, I guess you would call him. And his coding style.
He was a freaker, by the way, not a hacker.
Yeah, he was a freaker. Yeah, that's how he got his name, was the whistle. Yeah, and the 26 hertz, 100 hertz whistle. But I thought it was hilarious, and I swear it's related. His coding style was described as somebody who would write something, get results that were unexpected or flat out wrong. Like it would say 2 + 2 is 5, and instead of going in and fixing the problem, he would write additional code that said 2 + 2. If you get the result 5, it's 4. That kind of thing. So he would still allow the incorrect method, but then he would write another rule that said, hey, if you run this and you get this answer, actually just change it to this other answer, which should be right. And that reminds me of kind of what you're talking about with, like, instead of fixing what's causing the problem, having other rules developed that say, okay, well, there's these problems being caused, and we're going to still allow them to be caused and happen. We're just going to offset it here and here, and just let it go that way, which is super inefficient and dangerous, I think.
The people that want those things, the politicians, not the people, the politicians that want those things tend, at least in my opinion, to not actually want to correct. They're basically getting the virtue signaling so they can feel good. They can get support from people who also want to virtue signal, and they can continue the division. By treating them differently, they're going to continue the division and hatred so that they can now control and get votes from these people and get money from these people, all the while not actually solving the problem.
I think you can argue that also it empowers the people that want those in place. It empowers the racists. If I'm in charge of hiring and I'm a super racist or a sexist, and I have to hire a woman or have to hire 10 women, I'm going to hire the dumbest 10 women that are going to create the most problems, do the worst job, and fire them right away and replace them with 10 dumb women again, and constantly keep saying this diversity hiring doesn't work. Look at these dumb broads.
Oh, you're saying it's a
Literally, I'm correct.
weaponizable system? Is that what you're
Totally
saying?
weaponizable system.
And destroy your own business.
Can I tell you?
Yeah, it does make sense.
The Tech Foundation in
that's
Washington
not for your own
State.
business. That's
The
not
Tech
because if you're in a
Foundation-
small business, you don't fall under those guidelines. When we're talking about
Well, you
those
still have
mandatory
to pay
guidelines, we're talking about
unemployment.
big business.
You still have to pay for
The
unemployment.
Tech Foundation in Washington State wanted us to sign this this pledge that we were going to hire particular level percentage of racial, gender, and I don't remember what else percentages into our company. And I'm like, well, I hire on skill. I don't hire on that. And they're like, well, why don't you sign this? It's like, first of all, I think you guys should probably run this through your legal, because anybody who signs this is going to be open to a lawsuit, because it's like, oh, I'm not one of those, and therefore you didn't hire me, which is illegal. No, and on top of that, what's even crazier is that they decided that that Asians weren't persons of color anymore. You know, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. It's like, okay, they're making all these really weird. It's like, oh, Asians are too well placed already, so they're not persons of color anymore. I'm like, well,
That's like Joe Biden's
Oh,
decided that that the IRS needs to focus target whites and Asians to make it more fair now.
yeah,
And that's one approach, the Washington approach, the Biden approach. That is an approach to it, But again, it's just like saying, oh, there's this imbalance. Let's take a centralized approach at just rebalancing it, with brute force at the end after the results are in, instead of trying to figure out and improving the processes that created that imbalance in the first place.
yeah.
If I could circle back to the question and to give you my answer to the idea of from cryptocurrency about the workplace. First of all, the white paper is maybe a month old. It's finally put pen to paper, so there hasn't been any key findings, shall we say. It's all being vented like we're doing today, but it's really giving the will of the people a say in government. That we think has been stripped away. It's been circumvented. So let's go back to the local level. Let's say on a school board, and maybe critical race theory, CRT, the will of the people to the school board can have their voice heard, irregardless of because some people might want to speak up, but actually won't in public because of maybe retribution for taking a stand either one way or the other. But allowing them to vote behind the scenes, shall we say, in the DAO, off of their phone, logging into the computer, whatever, and being able to vote on the blockchain, their vote will be counted. They'll be able to see that it's counted. They'll be able to see that it wasn't manipulated in any way, and their voice will have been heard on the up or down vote on CRT. Should it be taught in the school district, yes or no? And that's how I would apply it. Or in the workplace, if there was an issue maybe locally or federally at the workplace that generated enough buzz that enough people were talking about it, and they wanted their representative to do something rather than spend time chasing money for their next election. So there's my answer.
Also, for current events, we didn't go over what Woody Harrelson did on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, maybe that's for the game show topic, huh?
I did not hear you. You'll have to tell me after we're done.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. You can go watch it.
Really?
Yeah.
You'll love it. It's hilarious.
Really,
yeah.
I'm not a fan of either Woody Harrelson or Saturday Night Live, so it's not really probably something, or YouTube for that matter.
Will be.
I love that
It'll
show.
trickle
I
down into
personally-
4chan eventually, Joe.
I've watched that show for so many years since I was a kid. I
me too.
have a lot of love to it for it.
Yeah.
Not every episode, but just in general. Hey, I think we got through a lot of really good conversation today.
Thank
And
you.
I think that this is one of the most important, timely topics that we've done. In addition to, like I said, we've had the last several we had like 3 in a row there that were related to this. I think, how do you apply what's possible to fix what is, kind of thing. But let's wrap up. We are at time, and we should end this while we still have enough time to. I forget what I was going to say there. Anyway, let's wrap up. We've got a show next week that's going to be interesting and different. We're going to be talking about game shows, blockchain related stuff, some not blockchain related stuff. We've got a special co-host that next week. You might know T Swift or Die from the coffee meetups that we do on Wednesdays, but he has designed a game show, an actual short game show, to replace our current events segment for the beginning of next week's episode. So that'll be interesting and fun and a change of pace. You know, we've done a lot of really heavy hitting existential topics on this show. You know, we've got a lot of really important discussions, and I'm sure that some of them will be important next week too. But I'm looking forward to having like a really lighthearted, fun episode. Not that today wasn't fun.
Is it the whole show? Is the game show? Or
No, just the opening, just the current event section. The beginning is a game show, and then the rest of it is talking about how would you use blockchain in a game show? What could you do in a game show that's related to cryptocurrency or to blockchain or things like that? Decentralization, maybe.
That's the $64,000 question.
Yeah,
yes, that'll be fun. All right.
So, in closing, thank you to our hosts. I really appreciate all of your inputs. Each and every one of you are worth listening to. You have life experiences and things that you can offer the world. And you're not the only ones. A lot of you out there do. So be heard. Speaking of being heard, where can people follow you and see what you're up to? I will start with Satoshi Sean. What can you tell us? Where can people find you?
Check me out on my YouTube channel. Me and Lisa do a show. First part's on her channel. Second part's on mine. That's usually at 4 Central, 5 Eastern on Tuesdays. Crypto Meme Review. Usually it's on the weekend. I was going to say, you can find me on Dragon Chain. Yeah, I always talk about this show on my channel.
You do, and thank you for that. I noticed that in your last Crypto Meme Review.
On the Twitters and everywhere, too. Yeah, that's about it. There's something else I should bring up, but I forgot. So, yeah, that's it.
Cool. Join Sean for the memes. It's a good time. Lisa, since Sean just mentioned the show you do together, you want to go next? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so I'm on YouTube. I have the Mighty Lair on Din Social, so I post all of my shows there. This week I had a great extra show with my buddy Bitcoin Ben. We did another. We used to travel a lot together, and I'd ask him all these questions because he's a studier of American history, and so we did an Educating Lisa this week. So go check that out. It's really interesting.
That's cool.
A lot of interesting stuff that people should know about American history.
I love his shirt in that interview you did there.
Yeah, he wears some interesting. He moved to Florida and he is fully embracing it. Yeah. So every day or weekdays, 4 Central, I have a YouTube show, and it's on Twitter and Rumble and Odyssey and Mighty Lair. And then I'm here every Thursday morning. So check it out.
Cool. Thank you very much. I did an interview with Lisa, not about blockchain at all, but it was about the ship that I used to be on. So go check that out too. I thought it was fun. I am for I am. Where can people find you or follow what you're up to?
Well, the powers that be, the party elites and the CIA, NSA have all canceled me. So this will be the last you'll see of me now because of my idea here. No, I was kidding. I created, believe it or not, finally a YouTube channel. So you can find me on YouTube. I am for I am. Just search I am for I am. You'll find it. But it's I am for I am we, because I am for I am was taken. And eventually I'll tell you how I came up with that name. And it's probably nothing what you thought. But there's an introvert video about who I am, where I come from, and all that. And then there's a video about the Umbrella Project, which I just filmed, shot, video took last night. So, but the real place to catch me is on din.social. Yeah, I have a Twitter page, but I rarely check it, or a Twitter account. I rarely check it. So really, if you want to find me, want to interact
very rarely.
Yeah. if you really want to interact with me, go to din.social. And there's chat there, there's direct messaging, and that's where you're going to find me. Next week, I'll probably be tied up with my wife's surgery, but after that, I'll be available.
All
and
right.
I really appreciate this. This has been great. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. On to Joe. Where can people follow your work or what you're up to? Or do you just have any last shout outs you want to give before we leave today?
Probably the most appropriate place is din.social. I'm Joe there, and anonymous. I have made a late New Year's resolution to post anywhere I can as anonymous, to try to push that as much as possible. And so fewer people hate me, and I get canceled a little less, and maybe I won't get throttled as much on Twitter and stuff. But the other thing probably important to note is all of the stuff that we talked about is possible. Like everything we talked about, technically, we can build. We can build any variation of it. I would actually say instead of calling them bylaws, I would love it if we called them constitutions. So we get into the frame of mind of creating a constitutional foundation for each of these DAOs. That they can all be different, but they can all borrow from each other tech and change. They can evolve over time and say, that pattern is freaking amazing. Look how well it did that district. Let's bring it over here. All that's possible. And it's just a matter of having the vision and putting in a little bit of effort. I'll volunteer time. So if you want to make a pack, any of you guys, let's make a freaking pack. I don't know how much money we'll have. I'll put in a little bit, but I'm not independently wealthy. I don't have a senator for an uncle or anything like that. But I'll be there. It wouldn't take much to put in a pack, and it probably wouldn't take much to get, like, say, maybe Reason or some other, libertarian focused or, some alternative media to say, hey, this is something that we haven't tried. Let's try this. We could possibly get a lot of attention and focus that way just by doing it. Right. So anyway,
Thank you.
This is a great show.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I agree. You got to start somewhere. And so just, not having all the answers or all the resources out of the gate is not an excuse. Got to start somewhere. So I would be down. Whoever wants to join in on that, let's talk about it on Din. Speaking of Din, my name is Dave. I'm on Din a lot. And today I just put up some metrics for the we have a new marketplace layer. We have a bunch of new layers. We have like 7 of them or something this month. And this morning before the show, I published some updated numbers on the lot, the layer ownership tokens, specifically on the passive input portion of that. And I've got a bunch of them that I'm trying to swap for Matter. So if you've been on Din and you have been earning these Matter rewards, and maybe you missed out on some of the layer creation contests earlier on in Din's cycle, I've got a bunch of those that I'm wanting to distribute. And so go check that out over in the marketplace layer. Sign up for Din if you haven't already. It's free. It's interesting. And I think potentially important. So that's what I'll say. Also, Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern, I have a coffee meetup, and anybody is welcome to swing by and chat about all the things. So with that, I'll say, do make sure that you join the World Blockchain Roundtable layer on Din to ask for questions, to ask questions next week for that show. The topic, the theme, is going to be, what would your blockchain game show look like? What would your blockchain game show look like? So go think about questions. What would your blockchain game show look like? Or something in the realm of that. You can ask questions. If it's answered on this show, you get rewarded for it based on the number of views that these videos get every week. So do share this episode because the more you share it, the more a lot our hosts and topic contributors will get. Go like, comment, and subscribe and all of that stuff. Thank you, everyone. Again, have a good one. See you next week. Bye. Bye.
Because that goes. will serve to organize and measure the best.
Adaptable, all capital, label radical yet rational. A tactical approach is palpable if this animal is fallible, but that conclusion is laughable. So with for all detachable from the mandible, you see it now.